Let's turn now to the co-founder and editor-in-chief of the Huffington Post, also the author of Third World America, How Our Politicians Are Abandoning the Middle Class and Betraying the American Dream, Arianna Huffington. Arianna, good evening.
Good evening, Keith.
All right, several days running now, trying to figure out what Democrats are doing on what should be a fairly easy win has proved to hurt my head. Have you figured this out?
I sort of have, but you have to stay with me because it's complicated. Here you have an issue where the Democrats are winning on all fronts. They are winning on principle. That's, after all, what the democratic principle is about. They are winning in terms of what's good for the economy, because you have major economies arguing that extending the tax cuts beyond $250,000 isn't actually going to help the economy, but instead it's going to increase the deficit to the tune of $700 billion. They are winning on polling, especially when it comes to that particularly desirable voting bloc, independents. So they have a trifecta, and yet they decide to kind of dodge a vote on the grounds that they are already winning, and therefore why have a vote, especially since any aspect of that could be taken up and mischaracterized in a 30-second commercial or on Fox News or any of these kind of boogeymen that they go to bed worrying about every night. So this is truly a very alternate, through-the-looking-glass universe.
Well, and more practically speaking, even if you accept that universe, they've gone from convinced that the subject of tax cuts would kill them to the subject that tax cuts will now make them survive. So you have now a complete switch just on within the through-the-looking-glass world. But again, occasionally there are a few things that come through there. What about Pelosi's idea that we just heard enumerated, the prospect of doing the suspension of the rules and having a 2/3 vote, so that there's no way you could pass the high-end cuts, but you probably could pass the middle-class cuts, at least in the House, so that the congressional Democrats have something to run on?
The only concern about that, as I've talked to some people on the Hill, is that already they have 31 Democrats on the record in favor of extending all tax cuts, including the ones for the rich. And they think that they may have another 30 or 40 Democrats who will go along with them. So they're also worried about whether they'll be able to hold their caucus in the House, because everybody's so jittery and so concerned about how any move is going to be interpreted by the other side that there is kind of real paralysis. And as Ezra Klein said, even with a majority, Democrats are now demonstrating a complete inability to govern.
But if they're standing pat in terms of the election, is that because they think the losses in the midterms aren't going to be as bad as everybody else seems to think they are?
No, I think right now, honestly, Keith, I don't think they're thinking beyond the election. I think they're so terrified of what may happen on election day that they're worried about any step they take which may increase the chances that they will lose a particular seat or lose the House or maybe even lose the Senate.
All right, having exhausted our minds on this, let me change subjects on you. Today there was yet another ruling against Don't Ask, Don't Tell. A federal judge in Tacoma said that the Air Force had violated the constitutional rights of the former Major Margaret Witt when she was discharged for being a lesbian. The judge ordered that she should be reinstated as soon as possible. Is there any chance that this lights the fire under the White House to do something on Don't Ask, Don't Tell before the election, rather than just let Congress kick this can down the road as well?
Well, Robert Gibbs said that any defense of the current policy by the White House is pro forma. These were his words. And, you know, that to me, Keith, kind of summed up what has been wrong. That Obama came to Washington to change pro forma things, to change the way Washington works. That's why he was elected. That's why there was so much passion and enthusiasm behind his election. And now when they come out with statements like that, it explains perfectly the enthusiasm gap that everybody's concerned about. And when you have actually log cabin Republicans now challenging the administration's policy, you see why this is getting really disturbing.
Yeah, I'm going back to Russ Martin in parliamentary procedure class. That's what this seems to be. The entirety of the Democratic majority in the House and the Senate seems to be a parliamentary procedure class, an experiment of some sort. In any event, by the way, I should mention that Rachel Maddow's guest at 9 o'clock is Major Margaret Witt. Arianna Huffington, the editor-in-chief of the Huffington Post. As always, a pleasure. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.